So, can anyone explain to me why all of them, or Yang, in general, is so upset about Raven and Crow being able to turn into birds? Now, don't get me wrong, okay? I'm going to assume that there's a lot more that we don't understand about it, which I'll get into in a second, but even then, though, Yang is really taking what Ozpin is saying, like, and what Raven said to her about them turning into birds very hard. Like, she's really angry, and just the tone of it is just very weird, especially out of all the other stuff going on, all the other stuff Ozpin has done, what was also placed on them, out of all the things, Raven and Crow turning into birds, it just seems like something that is very small in comparison to everything else that is going on. I don't know if Rooster Teeth is trying to imply something else is going to happen, but here's my overall theory of what I think it is. I believe whatever happened to Raven and Crow is a curse. Now, they may have been willing, and they complied with whatever Ozpin suggested, like, hey, I'll give you the ability to turn into, birds, okay? And maybe at first they were fine with it, like, let's do it. Like, they were probably completely fine with it, and maybe Ozpin is telling the truth. Maybe he's saying a half-truth, and he's not necessarily lying about it at all. He said it what it was, but here's the thing, though. What I'm assuming happened is that once he gave them the ability to transform, something else popped up. Most likely, a curse. And let me explain. Let's think about Ozpin's track record, okay? I'm not talking about what he did here. I'm just saying him being able to gift magic to others, gifts to others. He is the wizard in the story that made the spring, the summer, fall, and winter maiden. He is the origin of that story. He started it all. So without Ozpin, we wouldn't have had anything in this series. So he has always had the ability to gift strong magic to others, which has caused the entire plot of the series. But he also has been able to gift magic even after that, which now we see that he has gifted Raven and Crow the ability to transform and use magic instead of using their semblance. They're able to do stuff that doesn't require that magic. And he says that obviously his, magic capabilities have faltered, incredibly weakened over time, because a long time ago, he created the maidens. So he obviously had a lot more strength back then, but nowadays he doesn't really. But even then, though, let's look at what he has done. When he made the Spring Maidens, in a way, the Spring Maidens, they're a curse. It is a curse. In certain ways. A little bit different, but it's kind of still a curse. Now, let me explain. Every time a Spring Maiden dies, the last person they really think of and all that, it transfers over. It transfers over to that person. And so, that's basically what we found out a couple of seasons ago. And it's always something that constantly transfers to someone else down many generations. Now, let's think about Ozpin and what we found out. Ozpin, every time he dies, he finds a new host, he merges with that like-minded host, and then their souls merge, and the person is basically cursed. It's a curse on the original host because they are losing their life while Ozpin takes over. It's messed up. It's sad and messed up, but it's also a curse. It's also a cycle. He continuously comes back, very similar to how the maidens are. Now, let's look at what he did to Raven and Crow. I'm going to assume that maybe they were willing at first, but then they found out the problems, the ramifications for it, and most likely they might be cursed very similar to Ozpin. Who knows? Maybe if they were to die, they would also be like Ozpin, and they would transfer to another like-minded individual. For instance, example, let's say Crow dies, okay? Let's say Crow dies. He would most likely, his soul would travel around to someone that's very similar to him, and then he would be in a similar situation as Ozpin. That could be what would happen, and so that could be why this tone with the birds is so dire, is because they are cursed. And so, if, Rooster Teeth wants to take that, path with the story, then I feel like what we're about to have is a perfect time to explain that. Because let's look at what happened at the end of the episode. Emerald and, Cinder and all of them, and Merc, they're all popping up and all that, about to go up against Raven's entire camp. And let's say, Raven dies, this would be the perfect example to show that Raven would reincarnate very similar to Ozpin, which is why she's so upset that she's been cursed, basically, and so has Crow. They will continuously come back, and they will never officially die. They'll always be back. That could be why she's angry, and why Rooster Teeth is trying to add a lot of tone to that scene, especially with the birds. But even then, though, we know for a fact that Raven is not going to join Cinder, okay? That's obviously what Cinder's going to try to do, probably try to make Raven join or something. We know she's there for the Spring Maiden, obviously, but we know for a fact she's probably going to try to talk to, you know, Raven, like, get Raven to join, and most likely knowing Raven, no, she's not so to comply with, you know, Cinder and all that, especially when she finds out all the other stuff that's happened. So most likely, Raven's like, no, they're going to get into a fight, or if that does not happen, Raven's going to open up a portal, sacrifice herself for the Spring Maiden to get out through the portal, and wind up where Crow is. That could possibly be what could happen. But even then, though, if Raven does in fact die, that would mean that there could be a possibility she could reincarnate, very similar to how Ozpin was. So I just wanted to point that out, if that's the direction that Rooster Teeth wants to take the story. Anyways, though, dropping that, let's talk about the other stuff. So we have, like, a majority of this episode is actually just seeing all of our characters kind of, you know, sitting down, talking with each other. For instance, Nora and all that, Yang. The Nora and Yang stuff, that was pretty funny, especially the, doing the arm wrestling, and when you see how Yang trolled Nora, had the arm detached and all that, and she fell up against the wall, I was like, that's funny. That's legit funny. I laughed. Now, obviously, comedy's subjective, so it really depends on the person, but I had a good laugh there. It was pretty funny, and just seeing how Yang has now come to terms with her lack of arm, and she now is able to just attach it without really thinking about it and put it back on, it just shows how much she has changed since she actually lost her arm. Now, moving past that, though, we also see a nice, good scene with, you know, nicknames. Old nicknames popping up once again, which just shows how much they have changed since the start of the series. It reminded me of the beginning of RWBY, because when you think about it, when RWBY first started, it was a very lighthearted series with a lot of comedy, had some serious stuff, but overall, it was a very lighthearted series that reminded me of the earlier stuff of, you know, Red versus Blue. And you can see ever since that so much has happened, so much has changed. These characters have been forced to change and better themselves, and that's what's happening right now. And so it was like a trip down memory lane, them explaining how much they've changed or what they need to be better at. That's just really cool stuff, so I like what Rooster Teeth did, but overall, when it comes to the plot, that scene wasn't relatively important. It didn't really progress the plot in any way. It was just there just for the sake of just giving some clarification to what these characters do when they finally met up once again, which was very nice, by the way. So, yeah. I think that's about it. I mean, the episode overall was incredibly simple. It wasn't anything, like, mind-blowing or anything like that. It was easy to follow, and in a lot of ways, I feel like this is more along the lines of an episode to kind of fill in time for the upcoming stuff, more like a breather episode, because it seems like Rooster Teeth has been taking their time with the season. They've been having, like, these individual episodes that are not relatively that important, but more along the lines of character interactions than anything else. So I feel like they're trying to build up for something crazy to happen later on down the road. Oh yeah, there's one last thing I want to talk about before I actually end this video, though. It just reminded me. Let's talk about Blake for a second. So, when will Blake finally get off that island? Can we just talk about that for a second? Like, okay, I know it's not relatively important to this episode, but I just need to ask. Like, Blake has been stuck on her island since last season. And the episodes we get of her with what's been going on, they're not important at all. It doesn't really progress her story much at all. And so, I really, really hope that Blake gets a move on, and Rooster Teeth finally concludes that plot with Blake very soon, because right now, her overall plot, what's been going on, is just at a standstill. There has really been no progression whatsoever, and so I really do hope if we have a Blake episode next week, that it actually focuses on her getting off the island instead of just sitting on the island trying to make change or whatever. I want to see her finally get off the island. Hopefully, that is done, because it's been a thing that I noticed that's becoming more and more obvious as the series progresses, and hopefully Rooster Teeth finally handles that and gets past that island, because honestly, I think we can all agree that Blake has been on that island too much. She needs to get out of it for she can be a little bit more relevant to the plot, because Blake is my favorite, and seeing how she's not really been relevant in any time recently, hopefully she eventually does become relevant in the upcoming episode. So I want to end it there, so let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Did you enjoy this episode? Did you hate this episode? Please be honest in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe, and if you enjoy this video, please leave a like, and if you don't enjoy this video, like you didn't like it, well, leave a dislike. I don't fault you for it, because everybody has a right to dislike me, so I'm going to leave it at that. I love you guys. Please be safe. Chibi out.